Super Bowl, but it's nice to be back here.
I know you were here during the season, but how special is this for you?
Well, it's special. There's only 2 teams that make it this far every year. We happen to be one of them, so that makes it special. With this group of players and team, makes it even more special. It's been a good group. We've had a good 2-year run here, and to culminate with a chance to win it all is special.
Saints are talking about going to a 3-4 instead of a 4-3.
The Saints are?
And just your philosophy on the 3-4 and why it's been successful in the NFL.
Well, everything seems to have a run. I can remember when I first came in the NFL here with the Saints, there was only 3 or 4 teams running the 4-3. Everybody else was the 3-4. And then there became a run to where by the mid-90s to late 90s, it had kind of flipped. And then slowly here in the 2000s, it's become to where it's pretty balanced. It's almost 50-50, 3-4 versus 4-3. And, the 3-4 does allow you some versatility. You have another guy on the field who has pass responsibility as his job description. So you can mix and match a little bit better that way. The angles are a little different in the running game as for the offense to block it. But really it all comes down to players. You have a front 7, and whether it's 3-4 or 4-3, the good players, the good teams will make it work. But there are, in my opinion, there are some advantages to the 3-4.
Vic, do you think more pass rushers coming out of college are smaller, fit a 3-4 better, pass rushers specifically, these days?
Yes and no. I mean, that's one of the arguments personnel people had against being a 3-4 because they felt it was hard to find the outside linebackers that you needed to play that position because colleges weren't playing it. We're all a product of the college system to some degree. They're our farm system. And it is hard to find those guys. That's why when you find them, you've got to latch onto them. And we've got 2 good ones here in Ahmad Brooks and Alden Smith. And you always have to end up projecting some of those guys. Alden Smith actually played more defensive tackle in college than he played defensive end in college. He had never been a linebacker at any level, but we had to project that and foresee that. We did, and luckily we were correct, and he's been able to do that. But invariably, there's a lot of projections going on.
Vic, you coach an outstanding group of linebackers as defensive coordinator. You were the position coach for a group of linebackers we think around here is best ever. How do the 2 groups compare?
They're very comparable. That group back, the Dome Patrol, was a great group. And I think the one thing that was great about them is those guys started together for 7 straight seasons. And these guys have really only started together 1 season because Alden won the starter last year. Now, he played a lot. So, they're into their 1st or 2nd year as a group. I keep telling them that they've got to get to where they're together 6 or 7 years to where I can compare them to those guys. But hopefully we can keep them that long together. I think we can. And there's great players in both groups. And I've told our linebackers here that I've been asked that question a lot this year already, and I knew it would get asked here. And I think at some point I'll be able to give a favorable comparison.
Is it unique in that each guy kind of has his role and fits a different position in a similar way? You could say, Pat is out, the same player Alton was. Is it unique that you find 4 linebackers who all fit 4 different roles as well as they seem to?
It is hard to find those guys. As the inside backers go, I think our inside linebackers could play in a 4-3 just equally as well. It's the outside backers that are hard to find. And, again, we've gotten 2 really good ones here in Brooks and Smith. We had 2 really good ones back here in the day in Pat Swilling and Ricky Jackson. And Swilling and Alden Smith's career have paralleled a little bit. Pat was a pass rushing defensive end at Georgia Tech, had never been a linebacker. Really only played rush in sub situations for us his 1st year here with the Saints. And then we groomed him in to be a player his 2nd year, a full-time player. And that experience kind of helped me with Alden because I knew I didn't want to force it on him too quickly. And then also, we didn't have the off-season his rookie year, remember, with the lockout, so he lost a lot of work there. So there is some comparisons between those 2 guys, and Ricky Jackson Ricky Jackson's just the opposite. He played 3-4 left outside backer in college for 4 years at Pitt, and then was here for his whole career. He played that position his whole career. He was groomed for that and ready to go, and was a great player, Hall of Famer. So there's always a different story behind all outside linebackers you find.
What's the transition time, you think, Vic, to go from one to the other? Because it really is a different personnel group that you have to acquire to play that defense. What's realistic?
Well, it all depends on the players you get. You know, if you try and do it with a couple rookies that you're projected to be outside linebackers and have never been outside linebackers, it will take a little longer. If you're able to get some guys that have some experience in it and you can fit them in, then it won't take as long. The other thing you have to find is you have to find defensive linemen that fit that mode. Basically in a 3-4 you're playing with 3 defensive tackles. So you got to find the bigger body, the guys that can play the inside, run gaps, play strong, play physical. Whereas a lot of 4-3 teams, that's not what they're looking for in their defensive tackles. So it all depends upon what's already in place where you're trying to make that transition.
A lot of local fans that followed Patrick and Ricky Jean. Could you just talk about what they've meant to get you here?
Well, Patrick, as everybody knows, is a great player and was before we got there, and I think he's even improved in the last few years. Ricky's our 4th defensive lineman. He can play any of the 3 spots up front. He replaced Justin Smith when Justin missed his 2 games and went in there and did a really nice job for us. Had a big play in the New England game that helped seal the win there. Had a big play in the Arizona game when we were struggling in that game, which we had to win the division, and he's played well. He's a damn good player and very valuable player for us.
Ricky Jackson said he's had a chance to meet a couple of the guys. Have you made a point to introduce anybody, or that's just been?
No, we've come here and played twice. Once in the preseason, once this year, and Ricky always looks me up, and we always get together. We stay in touch regularly, and I made it a point to introduce him to Maude Brooks and Alden Smith a couple times, and Ricky will call me after some games and critique their play with me.
What do the players think of? I know I asked Navarro Bowman about it yesterday. He said he grew up watching Raymond. So these guys probably didn't grow up watching the Dome Patrol, but
no,
is there a level of respect, kinship?
They've come to learn about it because of the comparisons. With me being there and having been here with those guys, they've come to know about it, but they were too young then, these guys.
What stood out on tape about
Flacco? Well, I was there when Flacco was drafted in Baltimore, and right from the beginning, I was very impressed with him. He's got a big arm, throws the ball very easy and naturally. He's calm, he's knowledgeable, the game's not too big for him. In fact, I told John Harbaugh early on in the process of the first off season we were there with him during OTAs, I told him he's got his horse that he can ride for the next 10, 12, 15 years as his quarterback in Baltimore. I thought that then, and I still think that.
What's been the difference what's been the growth process that you've seen from him at the beginning to now? I mean, where has he kind of polished off and become an upper-level quarterback?
Well, he's had the benefit of playing in the same offensive system for 5 straight years, so he's grown into that. I know in the first year there was a special emphasis made to not throw the ball inside too much with a young quarterback. He now throws the ball inside equally well as outside. He's one of the few quarterbacks in the NFL that can throw the ball outside the numbers, the deep outs, the deep comebacks, the deep ins with proficiency that a lot of teams are afraid to do or don't have quarterbacks that can do that. So he can really stretch the defense that way with his throws outside. Kind of reminds me of Troy Aikman in that respect. When Troy was in his heyday, they'd run the ball, and throw the ball outside, deep and outside, and make you pay for playing the run too much. And Joe's the perfect fit for their offense.
Do you ever admire Colin and what he does for defenses and kind of the way the whole game is going that way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen him in practice. It's a new type of offense that's being sprinkled into the NFL. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. The colleges are our farm system, and that's what colleges are producing right now. And if the guy has some throwing ability, then it behooves you a little bit to run some of that in your offense, because it does make you nervous and have to adjust your scheme on defense.
Is it here to stay, or is it something that you feel like can be figured out like the Wildcat was back then?
No, I think this is a little different. You know, I think the first thing that came into the NFL that was different was the run and shoot, which came back into the late 80s. That had its shelf life and disappeared. The Wildcat has had some shelf life and basically disappeared, but it's still dabbled in a little bit with some teams. I think this one is here to stay because it stresses the defense more than those other ones. You know, those other ones were heavy pass, one was heavy run. This stresses you on both sides, run and pass.
You know this quarterback well, and I know you were asked this question in San Francisco. Is there any from intel that you can, extra insight that you can provide because you were there with this kid?
Not really. You know, maybe if it was a one-week game or a short week, like we played him last year on a Sunday to a Thursday, that helped because it was such a short week. But in 2 weeks to prepare for a game, I think anybody would kind of know the guy just as well as I do. I just know of his arm talent and his throwing ability down the field, and the guy's really come on here. He's hot right now, you know, which he hadn't thrown an interception in the postseason. They're averaging over 300 yards a game passing, I think, in the postseason. He's really good and he's hot right now.
Even though y'all are a 3-4 in base, you play a lot of even front. Approximately what percentage? And what do you think makes your defense unique among the other 3-4s in the league?
Well, we do play a lot of what we're alluding to as even front. That's when we're in nickel.
Right, 4-2 nickel.
And you know, how much we play of that is really determined by the offense. You know, do they want to run 3 or 4 wide receivers out there on us, and then we have to make the decision whether we match it or not. Sometimes we stay in our base against it, which I think we do more than most teams do. I think you need to do that some, so you're not always predictable, and it puts a little doubt into the other team's minds as to what you're going to be in out there against their 3 wides. But again, by and large, we will be in a lot of that versus 3 wide receivers. Now, we've had a run this year of playing teams that do that a lot. You know, we opened up with Green Bay and Detroit, and those were 2 games where I think if you totaled both games, we might have been in our base defense maybe 15 times in those 2 games. And, you know, and then we played Green Bay again in the playoffs, and they were the same way. And, you know, we played Brady, we played Breeze, we played, I'm forgetting right now. We've played a lot of teams that major in that. So this year our numbers are probably higher than normal as to when we do play the nickel.
Are most of the substitutions handled automatically, or do you all handle the personnel packages matching the offense from the sideline?
Oh, I determine that.
Vic, on Sunday night out here,